There is a lot of rebellion in the air. People are firing into the locations, the Tesla showrooms. People are getting
Hmm.
arrested for being rebellion air. Anyway, this Bradford Ferguson, has anybody ever used your brand to think about it in terms of rebellion being in the air before?
No, this
No?
is a brand new. We did
Yeah.
have someone ask us about our name, um and it's because we're kind of rebellious to the way, Wall Street tells you to do it.
That's right. That's right. I figured that all along, but I do think that it is appropriate right now because, well, there's actually lots of rebellions going on. So there's a rebellion in DC where Elon is leading the rebellion to kick out the deep state and to restore some kind of conservative financial sense to the country. Then you've got a counter rebellion. That's yeah, I'm just using your brand over and over again, And there's a counter rebellion of people who, for some reason, don't want us to get the financial house in order, and so are taking to the streets
Yeah, and
and
if we save the money, they want it spent anyways.
on something else, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of rebellion in the air going on right now. And what are you guys thinking as the stock continues to sink day after day, having broken through yet another two actually, a psychological barrier of 300 and a 50-day moving average, maybe, I don't know, of 288. And so what do you what can you tell me?
So I think as of at least 2 weeks ago, we've been warning about this publicly. Um, what a concern is that people are thinking that there's some kind of Tesla boycott happening. There are Antifa elements that are going after Tesla and vandalizing their property, things like that. But the thing that we thought would happen is that because the Model Y changeover really wasn't discussed on the earnings call, neither by Tesla management, they said the lines would be down for a few weeks. Nor did Wall Street analysts ask about it on a call. And Wall Street's kind of been silent on this issue of Tesla bringing down their production of the Model Y to scale it back up because they're, changing it over completely. It's going to be super compelling. Um, so we're seeing more articles come out about like European sales and how they're down by 45% or whatever. And the news article doesn't even mention the lack of supply from Tesla, the Model Y changeover. It's the largest impact is from the Model Y uh,
Absolutely.
changeover. Now there could be some people that are doing a buyer strike. Seasonally Q1 is weak. Um, and there may be more competition. That's going to be another thing that they'll blame is like more competition, but there really isn't new compelling EVs on the market, except for the Chinese.
Yeah, the Chinese. Yeah.
Yeah. So the media is going to share this without context, and I think people will buy it. They'll think something's wrong with Tesla.
So you
And,
think that consumers will think there's something wrong and that will add to their lack of interest, or do you think this is mostly just
I
investor?
mean, with the people are paying attention to the stock.
Right.
Um, they may not have done as deep of a dive as the rest of us, or people just lose patience over time.
Okay. So yes, I do remember, I absolutely remember you suggesting 2 weeks ago on my channel that the number, the unit quantity for the first quarter.
First quarter,
Yeah,
yeah.
I just got to get oriented here. I have a, did you know that I have a terminal disease? I haven't told anybody yet. So this is just between you and me. It's called AGE. Yeah. Yeah. I have it. I have a And sometimes I mix up.
That's a good one.
You like that? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have that the first quarter results could be a lot lower unit volume wise
Hmm.
that people were planning on, maybe even on the order of 350,000. Is
Yeah.
that still last week you reiterated this, saying 350 to 400,000? Have you guys rethought that or added to that analysis at all at this point?
Not yet. Looking for a little more information from what's going on in China, but it does worry me a little bit. The date for my new Model Y is now just March, whereas before it was like March 7th to the 28th or something like that. So I wonder if they're not confident about the tempo that they're producing them in the US.
Oh, I see. Okay.
If the US and Germany totally drop the ball on Model
Yeah.
Y, it's
Yeah.
going to be bad.
That could really
Be
hurt. Yeah.
bad.
Right.
Um, so the other thing that's feeding into this, and I think there's more to macro. We'll talk about macro. We will talk about Trump's gold card as well. I actually think there might be something to this gold card. I think there might be a really big impact from it. We'll see. But the stock's been dropping, and we've had this good news, like
Right.
the China FSD, which we're going to talk about
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
That's really great news. Also, it just seems more and more likely like the Tesla's going to make a compact, and
Right.
that's what they'll introduce within like 3 or 4 months.
Hmm.
Um, so they'll probably do it from the same line they end up building the Cybercab from. And Randy, let's talk about that shortly. But it's odd we have this good news and this is just zero reaction in the stock.
Yeah. Except, yeah, a reaction. It's going stuff like this.
Mhm.
Right.
And there's another thing with margin borrowing. We hit a margin borrowing peak in November, just market wide margin borrowing. And the last time it hit this level, so it's over $900 billion are the
Mhm.
margin balances.
Mm.
Last time it hit this level was November 2021.
Okay.
And Teslanaires remember that
Yeah.
very vividly.
Yes.
They wish they could have sold more
At that
um,
point.
around then. Um, So it makes us a little nervous, and you see crypto selling off.
Yeah.
That was really big yesterday, crypto selling off. There might be something wrong with Ethereum. That's the drama. But also, it's companies that don't have super strong profits right now. So Tesla sold off by 9%. Lemonade's not profitable yet. They sold off quite a bit, but there are a number of other growth stocks that sold off huge. Some down like over 20%.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Besides Tesla. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my comeback to some people is we're up something like 35% over the last 6 months. So it's not like we're really down. What we are is we went way up and we came back, but over the last 6 months, we're up. We were up 40. I didn't look today to see what it is, but I think it's around 35% at this point
Mhm.
for over the last 6 months. So, most people would be very happy with 35% gain in 6 months.
Yeah. Well,
Ought
it's
to
no
be,
longer 100% gain
it's
in
no
six
longer
months.
100%, yeah, or
Yeah.
150% or whatever. Yeah. So, all
We're
right.
not chartists, but um we haven't been buying the dip yet. Um we're concerned that it could go past 270 and you might even and this is just silly to say, but it's motion in the stock market.
Right.
We could get back to 220.
Hmm. Yeah, I know that's kind of what everybody's talking about. I've heard of quite a few people on X who have been saying, I think the entry point for me is 275." So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If nobody's buying, to
Hmm.
offset the selling. And it does appear that the selling is really constant. There have been a lot of concentrated sales at the opening. Like uh, and some days it's 5 minutes after the opening. Sometimes it's like right at the opening. Other days, today, it was before the opening is when the big sales came in and
Hmm.
dropped stock very rapidly before the opening. So it's almost like, you know, like somebody is gaming it a little bit out there. I hate to suggest such a thing. I don't know how you feel about
That
the
would take a lot of money though. Like that would have to be maybe Citadel doing that or one like high speed traders or market makers that have like very deep pockets because um Tesla trades a lot of shares and in the
right.
morning that print might be well over 1 million shares.
Yeah.
You're talking about $300 million. So I I don't think people are playing with those kinds of dollar amounts just to try and move the stock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we the obvious things and on this show we've talked about a lot of them. I mean, the obvious question is whether Elon's politicking is impacting, the stock price. And I have joked, well, who's politicking, is destroying Bitcoin, and why is NVIDIA after they beat top, bottom, and with guidance, why are they down 33 cents in the after our
Mhm.
trading? It's like, well, there's got to be something more than just Elon's, antics, as they call them now.
Mhm.
So what do you think? Is this something to do also with the macro, either the market macro or the economic macro?
Yeah, people were talking about some kind of growth scare yesterday, where growth maybe we don't go to recession, but the growth slows greatly down because Doge is cutting a lot of spending and temporarily that could cause a reduction in growth and maybe even a recession, depending on how much they really cut.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so I I think
By the
that's
way,
how.
I'll take my victory lap on that one. I started talking about that 3 weeks ago.
Um, yeah, so but I think ultimately it doesn't matter and Tesla hit some kind of bottom um maybe by the latest like in June when right before Robotaxi comes out, but it could be earnings where it just sells down all the way down to earnings or all the way down to that April 2nd report, production and delivery report, and then maybe that serves as some kind of bottom. And ultimately, it like the Model Y changeover, I think greatly raises the ceiling of Model Y. They did 1.2 million 2 years ago. They were lucky to almost match that last year, even though they knew most buyers knew a new Model Y was coming.
Mhm.
So they're very lucky to almost match that. But I think the new ceiling on a Model Y could be as high as like 3 million.
Yeah, you mentioned that last week, and
Mm.
in a show that will be coming out in at 7:45 tonight, Brian Wang will be talking about your estimate of 3 million. So this is kind of in reverse order.
Oh,
I promised Brian that I would ask you, do you think it can get to that 3 million if there was no such thing as unsupervised FSD, or are you counting the unsupervised FSD as part of the reason why it gets to that number?
um, I think part of the reason would be FSD um, as a useful driver assist, not even for robotaxi purposes. So
Mhm.
where the car, drives you around and you don't have to monitor it. I think that definitely helps, but what I'm looking at is the global luxury SUV market,
Mhm.
which is something like 7.5 million
Mhm.
on the luxury side, and why wouldn't the Model Y take a large portion of that?
Especially with these costs and with the quality of the new product. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
And
So
it's
that's
likely going to be priced lower than like all the luxury ICE SUVs of the same size. and it should be a no-brainer for people to choose the Tesla over those. Now, the big question is the Chinese vehicles, you
Right.
know, how big those will be. So I'm curious what Brian Wong says tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, so what does Brian Wang say about the 3 million number? He thought that that might be a little bit of a stretch without unsupervised FSD, but
Okay.
with unsupervised FSD, I think they'll sell every Model Y they can possibly pop. I've been
Hmm.
saying that for, I don't know, 5 months now. I just, I think that people are, if they're underestimating robotaxi, what they're really underestimating is the word of mouth when it's fully unsupervised.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to want to take their neighbor in their car. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm going to be up and down the block, I think, saying, "Would you like to go for a ride in my?" I mean, I think that, and then the Grok voice. We'll talk about Grok in a minute, but if the Grok voice is in the
Hmm.
car and it's unsupervised, that's two different reasons to take somebody for a ride in your car. And I just think those two things are in some ways way more important than the fact that the Model Y will now be more comfortable as a driving machine and quieter. I mean, those are great and
Hmm.
more luxurious interior. Okay, great. But man, unsupervised and Grok, that's pretty huge.
Speaking of huge, let's talk about the gold card before we come back to
Okay.
Tesla.
All right. So I know you did some analysis. You asked Grok a few questions and you got some answers. So tell me your theories about the gold card.
So what the gold card is there's a visa called the EB5 visa.
And then now
Um,
this
wh-
is not a Visa branded gold card. This is a
right.
Visa that you get to come into the country.
Yeah, come into the US, and it's for small business owners. Alexandra Mers helps people with their EB5 visas. Trump is saying this gold card would replace that, where people can just essentially pay $5 million to have a visa to come into the U.S. Um, Tech companies certainly would want to pool together 5 million um, to get their rock stars into the U.S.
Oh, so you
Um,
have to pay this out of your own pocket. And then let me also ask on the existing one, it's $1 million and you have to employ 10 people when you get here. And
yeah,
and the $1 million is not something you pay to the government. It's $1 million that you
invest.
invest
Yeah,
in a company when
yeah.
in order to come here. I know my sister sold a nail shop that she owned to somebody who was able to buy it using
Mhm.
that approach. So
Yeah, so the wild piece of this one is the $5 million goes to the US government.
government, yes, right.
And so I asked Grok about millionaires
Yes.
outside the US.
Okay.
And there's now this is just people who have at least a million. This
Right.
so it was 15 million millionaires in Europe, 6 million millionaires in China, and 1 million millionaires in Taiwan.
Okay.
Um, if I lived in Taiwan, I'd probably want to move to the US if I could. Um, I think this is a really brilliant idea. And the reason being is the potential. Um, these people wouldn't just be giving $5 million to the US government. They would want to own a house here in the United States. They probably want to get their business going, that kind of thing. So they
Right.
likely would make investment in the United States as well.
Now, I
Um,
assume I assume they get to bring their spouse and children.
I would think so. Yeah. That's pretty key. And then so people are saying, well, these people don't necessarily have $5 million or $10 million. So I asked Grok how many deca millionaires there
Right.
are
Right.
in the world,
Right.
and it said 2 million deca
Two
millionaires.
million. Okay.
And I tried both Grok Deep Search and Grok Think. And so this is for Grok 3. And it also said that there were 1 million Duckin millionaires in the United States.
Okay.
So there's essentially 1 million outside the US. So I don't think necessarily a million people buy the gold card,
Right.
even
Right.
though I think it's a phenomenal deal. But if you think about it, 1 million times $5 million is $5 trillion.
Brilliant. Yes.
And depending on the demand for this, if somehow you got multiple millions of these sold,
Right.
you could pay off the US debt with it. And Trump was talking about this when they introduced the idea with Howard Lutnick at the press conference.
Yeah. 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 Well, so you're obviously bringing in the best and the brightest. Some people were joking that you might be bringing in some criminals, and so I assume there'll be
Yeah, yeah,
another a level of vetting that needs to take place here.
yeah. It could be people who got the money through ill-gotten gains for sure. And that, yeah, that definitely poses a risk. Yeah, you don't want all the criminal masterminds in the U.S. Yeah, maybe that would be bad.
You also have potentially, at least, that other countries might feel like this is really, not very nice,
Hmm.
sucking up all the
Yeah,
these.
it would definitely annoy countries, and especially China. I think if you um, did a mass migration of people from Taiwan, China wouldn't like that. You definitely don't want to make Taiwan a state of the U.S. I almost think like the U.S. could charge Taiwan like $1 trillion or something, and Taiwan could become a state of the U.S. But I think China would take that as a maybe as an act of war. That'd be pretty. China would not like that at all.
Okay,
But
so
anyways, let's just go with this crazy
yeah, yeah,
idea.
yeah, yeah.
Like, what if this gold card could literally pay off the U.S. debt?
Well, there's a problem, as I know because
I'm maybe I don't. So let's hear
okay,
it.
there's negatives with paying off the debt. So it is a major place where old people like me put their money is the treasury bonds because you get usually a pretty good return and it's absolutely guaranteed. It's like, so you have maybe 20% of your money in those treasury bonds or, you know,
Mm.
and so there's also international, people buying and selling bonds. And then the bonds also help to set the value of the currency. And you can kind of use the bond market as a way to change your valuation of your currency. So you don't want to be 100% out of debt, but paying down the debt or helping to keep from getting more debt would all seem to be extremely cool goals that a country could want to adopt.
So I'll come back to paying off the debt completely.
All right,
So
all right, okay,
I'm going to come back to this. So this is a little crazy, but I just let my mind
sure,
explore things.
yeah,
So, what if they abolish the income tax from this?
yeah, yeah,
I think that would be uh, hugely bullish for them to do that.
right,
Um, and I think it'll encourage a lot of people to come to the US. Like like you said, like they don't want to move the millionaires to move to the US. But then you also abolish the income tax, and people don't want to pay income tax, so they're going to come to the US.
right.
Um, so like it could get really wild. Now, I'm not sure I'm not sure about this, we don't want to pay off all the debt. That's a little too crazy. But what if the US paid off all the US debt, and then at that point, why wouldn't the US go on a gold standard? It's like you've abolished the income tax, you
Yes.
paid off the debt, um, all this, the best talent is going to want to come to the US. And then on top of that, you add the gold standard to put further pressure on the rest of the world.
Yes, Scott Bresson, the new Treasury, is that the right pronunciation? Scott Bresson, new
Scott Bessent.
Bresson, this new Treasury Secretary, was asked about the possibility of market putting a market value on our existing gold reserve, because our
Hmm.
existing gold reserve, I think, is at 30 is on the books at $35 an ounce.
Oh boy.
So
Well, yeah, they should have it valued.
he
So,
says he
so
says that
you,
is not on the list of things he's thinking about right now.
yeah. Well, I think it is important to know though, because
Yeah,
we do have that versus the national debt.
yeah. I mean, nobody's taking that in consideration. So if they did mark to market on the gold reserves, it would totally change the debt as a percentage of assets. And nobody counts, in those assets. Nobody counts, I don't know, 500 jillion acres of land that has trees, minerals,
Hmm.
all kinds of things. Nobody includes that in the assets, of the United States when they're making the valuation in terms of the debt. The debt problem to me is all about the interest we pay.
Yeah.
Not sure that I care if they could get interest-free credit cards, then I'm not sure that it would matter how much the debt was.
So
All right. Well, okay. So
if you could pay off the debt,
yeah,
abolish the income tax,
right.
you go to the gold standard, you'd have all this activity just flowing to the US. And on top of that, probably the US would try and buy up all the gold in the world because all these other currencies would be devalued versus the dollar. So you might as well just like
Buy
buy
it.
all the gold in the world. So I just wonder about this. Like, has Elon Musk figured out Grok 4? And are they figuring out, okay, here's the steps to like really take over the world from here?
So in other words, so then at some point you just start buying up all the other countries, not just Greenland, but you start, you buy Ireland, you buy France. Well, no, France be last. But you just start buying these countries one at a time. Poland, by the way, I guess has the fastest growing economy in Europe. Did you know that? Man, I think the fastest growing economy in the world. Poland. We're gonna have to stop the jokes. I
It
mean,
doesn't surprise me. They're probably spending a good chunk on military.
yeah, they are. Over
Because
5%.
if Europe didn't have Poland,
Yeah,
there's no break between the Russia and the rest of Europe besides Ukraine.
right.
And
Yeah,
I think at one point like Poland was, I don't know, some outrageous number of the military men in Europe and the tanks as well.
yeah, yeah. All right. So I had
But I think one thing helping Poland is I don't think they're unionized as much.
oh no, 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 they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they have. Yeah. So I had another theory on the gold card. My theory was, what if it was just you kind of say the first 200,000 a year, get the deal, and so you don't worry about paying off the debt. You just bring in $1 trillion a year to help get rid of the income tax.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
like that.
yeah, just 200,000 a year seems like that's doable.
That'd be good.
And if you could have a market thing going on there. If you only get 180,000 and you still want to get your trillion, you could, have a sale. And so some people could get in for, if they played their cards right, they might get in for 4 million instead of 5 million.
Yeah.
But
I,
it's
I'm fascinated by this. I'm really curious to see what happens.
so we're gonna Trump, who I never really thought of as being creative. Now maybe he's got other people around him that are the ones being creative, but we've got buying, Greenland, taking Panama back, making Canada the 51st state, taking over and owning Gaza for at least the next however long until we can fix it and turn it into a resort. And now we have got the gold card. So I mean, if it's not him, somebody in his sphere of influence definitely got some creative juices going.
JD Vance made a claim after week two that it's going to be as crazy of a pace for the next 2 years, and I think that's what he said.
It's going to continue like this.
Hmm.
Oh, that's crazy. Yes, well, it's fun. I don't even watch television anymore. It is really there's yeah,
Just read the news on X.
I'm just sitting on X, writing, making comments on X, and it's like, oh, but I want to watch the rest of that show. Well, no, not now.
Hmm.
It's way, way too much fun. Way, way too much fun. Well, okay, how about Grok? You had some comments up on your X channel about Grok as well.
Yeah, so we're getting a lot of value out of ChatGPT Pro subscription, and that gets you the deep research
Mhm.
for ChatGPT. It also gives you unlimited on the voice that they have. Um, ChatGPT research has saved us a ton of time
Mm,
with investment analysis.
right.
And I
Unfortunately,
think,
half of it is hallucination, but it's okay.
well, it searches the web for the facts it uses.
Okay.
It
Fine.
it might not fully complete a search, so it can still come up with bad tallies or whatever.
Right, right.
We were researching a company where Matt saw on a slide that the company said they had 1.7 trillion backlog. That'd be a lot of orders.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That'd be 1.7 trillion in
Lot.
revenue.
Nobody has 1.7 trillion.
Yeah. So we did a Chat GPT deep research and asked just about the business. So it was Eaton, and they make transformers,
Mhm.
electrical equipment. There's a shortage of
Yeah,
transformers.
definitely. Yes.
So I asked about the shortage of transformers, the any new factories they haven't coming online, what in the supply chain has caused the shortage, things like that. So I learned about this resin that's allegedly used in those, and but it said the backlog was 12 billions with a B instead of 1.7 trillion
Trillion. Yeah.
with a T. So I came back to it, and I pushed back and I said, they're claiming this big backlog. You're saying it's 12 billion, who's right? And typically these LLMs, they want to be helpful, and
Yes.
they'll just lay down and be like, "Oh, you're right. I'm wrong." But it found where Eaton in previous investor materials had described this whole backlog figure where essentially they take all the projects that are $1 billion or more that have gone out for bidding or whatever
Oh,
and add all those up in the US.
I see.
But only a portion of those goes to Eaton.
Sure, sure. So there's a
Um,
potential TAM if everything goes our way.
yeah, that's basically what they meant. So it was really good for us because um, we feel, just our opinion, we feel that's a little dishonest by management to put the word backlog there. We understand maybe they previously explained it, but
Yeah, yeah.
we were new. So that it just allowed us to move on from the stock for now.
Mhm.
Um, another Grok also has a research mode, and they have voice, and the voice is pretty crazy. Um, But I use the research and think to plan a trip to England. So I'm going to be in England for 4 days
Yeah.
because I end up in the Southampton after a cruise, and then we have like 5 days before we fly out of London back to
Mhm.
Indiana. And so I had a general idea where I want to go. I want to go like northwest to Bath and go north and then come back over to London. And um yeah, I remember these towns that I visited in 1995. I
Hmm.
went there for my senior trip in high school.
Okay.
Very lucky. And so I asked it about to do an itinerary for me. So I used Grok 3 Think
Hmm.
for the overall itinerary. So it gave me a 4-day itinerary. It told me how far was too much driving. So it's like you can't really do that. So we gotta do this instead. Um, and it included what I wanted. So I want to see castles, I want to see palaces and gardens. Want to see medieval architecture, so churches,
Right.
Roman ruins, things like that. Um, so it came up with this itinerary is like super feasible, involves very little driving each day, maybe a couple hours at most, each leg.
Hmm.
Um, and then I took each day and I fed it into Grok uh, deep search. And so it knew the sites I wanted to visit. It could see that. So then each site I wanted to visit, it would look to see when it's open, how much the tours cost, like if there's if there's part of it's free and part of it's paid,
Sure.
or if you can only see the site on a paid tour. So it gave me all that information, you
Yeah.
know,
Very
using
nice.
search. So we're getting a lot of value off of the search tools that are out there right now.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. So, and then I don't know if we've talked about it in the past. We probably have, but I mean, uh, are you as excited about the product aspect of Grok voice being in the car? I mean, do you see it as something that will sell vehicles on its own?
I haven't really thought about the use case a ton. I think maybe I need to spend a little time with Grok, asking, okay,
That's right.
how would you use this in the car? Because you already have some voice commands like, navigate to blank or whatever.
Mhm.
I do think it would be cool to have conversations with Grok when you're in the car. So I guess that would be the main use would be to have fun conversations. Maybe you could learn about something,
Yeah.
um, learn the news or tell it about what's going on in your life. So use it kind of like a diary or a confidant.
Yeah, I had a friend who he always shocks people because he's white as I am, and he'll be in a booth, and Asian business people will come into the booth at a trade show, and they'll start talking amongst themselves in Chinese, and then he'll come up and he'll talk back to them in Chinese, and
Uh,
they're like, they're like all shocked, and he learned it in his car using, I forget the name of these language
there's
classes.
one's Duolingo
Yeah, but anyway, you just,
like that.
plug it in and just while he's driving around, and he was able to learn the language just while he's driving around. So yeah, there's all kinds of things that you could potentially do if you had, Grok in your car. Um, what about the economy? What do you think's going to happen with the economy? We have uh, we have bells going off. I mentioned the economy and all kinds of bells.
Yeah, the leading economic indicators aren't good. Um, I talked a little bit about Grok spending cuts earlier.
Right.
Um, Homeowners are really getting shellacked. It's really bad. I mean, home builders
Home builders, right.
are really getting shellacked. Um, and homes are the number one thing that are sold in the US as far as the biggest
10%,
item.
10% of the economy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big portion.
Pretty big portion of the economy.
I think cars are generally weak in the
Yeah.
US economy. Um, so I'd say it's like somewhat soft, even though people are generally excited about Trump.
Mhm. Yeah,
Also, if you end up deporting a lot of people, there are a lot of people who just they come here and they work hard and they're um, um, maybe they're exploited a bit where they get a lower wage than they would get otherwise. But they are used to build houses and they can be used in factories and other things and um, that could be bad for the economy as well,
yeah,
where
just
on a temporary
removing.
basis
Mhm.
before everyone kind of adjusts and okay, well, we do need people to pick our strawberries and um,
I
you know,
understand there's going to be a lot of government workers that are going to need jobs.
oh, there you go.
So picking strawberries might be the perfect.
Yeah.
That might be something they're better at than they were. I'm sorry. I'm sure there are millions of, as everybody says, I'm sure there are millions of hardworking, dedicated government employees out there.
Mhm.
But those aren't the
I'm
ones.
hearing word that like some of them are thrilled by the changes.
Yeah, I bet you the ones that I bet the
Mhm.
ones that are hardworking are thrilled by the changes.
Yeah. Jordan 𝐑𝐚𝐧𝐝𝐲, the limiting factor, he said on X, he used to work in a role for government. And there was one point where the manager admitted that their work was pointless and it served no purpose and wasn't mean, but just like matter of fact about it. And he said the team made the manager apologize.
Yeah, exactly.
So they'd rather just kind of pretend like that was a bad statement or he was wrong rather than acknowledge that their roles were now redundant. Yeah.
I had a young
Now,
man,
not every government role is redundant.
right? No, I had a young man come live with me at age 16 because he had a situation at home, and he then went into the armed services and was in the army for I think 3 years, and was stationed in Afghanistan, was stationed in Texas. He had two or three different stations. Had a 4-year degree, I think, when he went in, and almost every text or email or whatever he sent was, I am so bored. There's nothing to do. If what I'm doing here is useless, worthless, it was just,
Oh,
at every station that he was in, it was always the same thing. So he had kind of thought it might be a career, and he was like, I need out because there's no value here.
hmm.
So, so even the military, not even the military, I'm just saying, I've heard this, I've heard the story before. I mean, every company has the bottom 5% or the bottom 10% that my company's had the bottom 5 or 10%. I got rid of them every fall.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty small. We have 12 people. Hopefully, I'm not the bottom 10%.
Yeah, that's always the question, right?
Mhm.
Is the CEO the one that should?
Generally, the entrepreneur is the roadblock, and I think Randy knows as well as a consultant to many entrepreneurs, right?
Oh man, well see, there's a difference that's a whole story in itself. Let's see. Do we have time? In my books, I've divided entrepreneurs into five kinds. The entrepreneur, to me, the real meaning of the word entrepreneur is somebody who has a vision, who is able to communicate the vision to others, like Elon.
Hmm.
The vision is somehow going to make the industry better or make it more competitive. It's going to grow the business in the direction.
Right.
Um, I would say that represents maybe 20% of small business owners or medium-sized business
Hmm.
owners. Most small business owners or medium-sized business owners, they're in the business that their dad was. They bought the business that they were working for.
Hmm.
They went to school to learn how to be, a beauty shop operator or whatever, uh,
Hmm.
a locksmith or something like that, and or they went to business school and they just are a manager, a really good manager. Those are some of
Yeah.
the successful, is the managers. But I'd say 80% of all the businesses out there are not very entrepreneurial.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear because I'm this may sound weird, even though I'm an analyst, I'm more of the visionary in the business. and that's not always helpful, but the visionary brings lots of ideas, so you need breaks on the ideas so you're not constantly chasing the shiny object.
Right,
Speaking of shiny objects, let's talk about Tesla's Cybercab slash compact.
okay, let's do that.
So
So,
we're
tell me
seeing more and more of them with a steering wheel
with the steering
inside.
wheel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where are you coming down on this wild and crazy story? Brian Wang and I will be talking about that again at 7:45, but I'd love to hear your version.
So, at the risk of disrespecting Brian
It's all
White,
right. It's okay. You can.
who is
I asked
he
him.
is spent more time with the Cybercab than I did. Um, I was at the Robotaxi
Right.
event, but that means I had like 6 minutes with the Cybercab basically. So he's saying for Tesla add a steering wheel and pedals that it'll take a lot, and they have more changes that they need to make to that. Um, I might have to get some water.
Okay. All right.
Um, so Brian White saying it's not it's not a trivial thing for
Right.
them to switch between the two. Um, but you got to remember Tesla's a car maker. They make cars. So it might sound like 200 steps. You got to add wiring to the steering wheel. You got to add a pedal, or several pedals. You got to add some other things, and maybe even a charging port. So um, it's not the wireless charging.
Right.
There's other things like that. Um, so so it's non-trivial, but I think here's the problem Tesla faces is that even though autonomy is allowed in various states like Texas and Florida, supposedly it's over 17 states that allow autonomous vehicles, there's limits on how many you can do in year one. And I think there's like no guarantees they allow you to add, more than this. So I think in Austin, the number's something like, um, it might be 250. I hope not, but I
Mhm.
think it might be the limit might be 2,500. So it's like, is it 250 the whole first year, and then maybe you get to do 500? So what Tesla needs to do is they can't just flood a city with 10,000 robo taxis. They kind of need to just to like fully cover a city. Most cities won't allow them to do that. So they actually need to do the compact first.
Okay.
And we think it might look a lot like the Cybercab. You might as well change as the least amount as you can. Um, Unfortunately, it would mean it would just be a two-seater
Mhm.
or a front row. You could squeeze a third seat in there. There's a lot of room in the Cybercab, left and right, so you could make it tighter and add a seat in the middle and move the drink holders somewhere else. Um, yeah, so we think it'll be the compact, and you can't have two rows, I don't think, because not in that shape, because if you get rear-ended, um, it might be dangerous for the people in the back row. I could be wrong. I might not be, seeing it right. I'm not a automobile person. So we wouldn't be surprised if that's the more affordable vehicle. We really hope it's not a Model 3 with cloth interior, or, some stripped down Model Y. I think that'd be really bearish if that's what it was.
Well, Lars did say that they're going to make sure that it's not a that they maintain the quality, the image of Tesla.
Hmm.
So now for 100 years, when I had a choice, I bought cloth seats. I
Hmm.
live in California, The sun beats down on the car, 12 months a year. I used to be a convertible driver when I came to California. You can't own a convertible in California. It's ridiculous.
Hmm.
And so I preferred the cloth seats because they were so cool. Now that you've got the leatherette or the vegan leather seats with the holes in them,
Hmm.
blah blah blah, that changes a lot. So
The holes make it a lot cooler, even
yeah,
if you don't have the ventilation in the seat. It
right,
does help them be a lot cooler. But Tesla does make their own seats,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I know if you add colors or add different fabrics, that does add complexity. But um, why couldn't they do cloth seats?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so I'm not going to reveal what Brian and I are going to say later. This will just be like kind of like part two. You have to come in and hear my version of what I think is going to happen and Brian's version in part two. I could tell you off air after. No, I can't because we got to do unless you want to sit through the numbers.
I don't know. Let's talk a little bit about China FSD.
Sure.
It's kind of funny to see. So I used GPT Pro. I used the voice on it
Okay.
to translate some of the videos. So what I'll say to it is, um, I'm gonna say some stuff in Mandarin Chinese. When you hear that, translate it back to
Nice.
English, and
Nice.
don't say anything else.
Yeah.
And then I'll just hold it up to the speaker. I'll play like 10 seconds of the video, then I'll pause it and it'll tell me what the person said.
It's very cool.
So that's kind of fun, but the other piece is like you're seeing the whole FSD thing again on repeat. So like there was a guy who got a strikeout during his video. So he got essentially he wasn't looking at the road enough
Yeah, yeah.
and he got locked out of his own vehicle. Or not locked out.
Yeah, out of the FSD. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So anyway,
Seems
yeah,
to be
so
doing well. It just respects pedestrians too much. So
is
the
it?
rule in China is like you want to keep your wheels rolling a bit, and the pedestrians have to get out of the way. So it's not like you're going fast around them, but you're at least moving the car at a walk. And the Tesla was respecting pedestrians too much.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can I can see that. The other thing I don't know about China, I know in Taiwan, and when I was in Taiwan, that it was the bigger you are, the more right of way you have.
Mhm.
It had nothing to do with where you were in space, but if you were bigger, you got
You're
right
a truck, you got the right of way.
of way. And
If you're a
pedestrians,
car, you have a right of way over pedestrians or
yes,
bikes,
our bicycles, our mopeds, of course,
mopeds, yeah.
which is the main transportation, is the mopeds. So the mopeds are everywhere, but the mopeds are paying really close attention to the cars because they don't want to get run over.
Yeah.
So
So it'll have to learn to
yes,
do that in China.
yeah, yeah. So
But
so
early reviews seem to be that it's very
doing well.
impressive.
Yeah.
It's doing some curbing. I've heard about that, but
Okay.
I
All right. Okay.
otherwise it seems what I've seen it the reviews are they're very impressed, and it's people who have tested other or claim to have tested um, other systems, and
Right.
they say, okay, well, this system is overtuned to Beijing. It's really good in Beijing, but not as good in Shanghai or whatever.
Mhm.
But that the Tesla system seems consistently good for China.
Oh, very cool.
And what's impressive is Tesla didn't train the system with real world data.
Right.
So they literally trained it from videos on the internet.
Yeah.
So they already have a system where it understands the general problem of driving,
Mhm.
but then they are able to add this data synthetically for what they thought a Chinese driving experience would be like
Right.
based off of these videos.
Yeah.
Um, and it worked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they're going to be able to do this for India, for Vietnam, other places. And what's exciting is that the system should get better in all places as it adds more data from different
Everywhere.
countries. It'll
Yeah.
just become a better driver,
Yeah.
like more superhuman.
Yeah, because it is a lot of fun, even as a human, to go try to drive in another place. I think the only place I ever just parked the car was in Spain, in Madrid. Madrid's main part of town has 7 lanes in each direction. I'm sorry, 7 lanes one way.
Hmm.
So you've got a one-way street that kind of is a big circle, and then you got anyway. And of course, the signs are all in Spanish. And so think about your trying to get out of your roundabouts. Think about if the roundabout was 7 lanes and you're trying to
Hmm.
get out of your roundabout and get where you want to go, except you can't read the signs.
Oh boy.
So when I finally got to the hotel, I parked the car and I'm like, we'll take cabs. This is not good. So yeah, every city, every place in
Yeah.
the
Well,
world.
now you could use Google Maps. You'd be good.
So there you go.
And Google Maps would be in English for you.
That's right. That's right. Well, this was before you were born. No, not quite, but pretty close. Maybe. I forget how you. Yeah, I forget.
I am old enough that I did use paper maps,
Paper
so
maps.
I know how to use a map.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I was in Spain. That would have been. I guess I was 31. Does that be? What would that be? 48, 31, 79, about 80, about 1980. I was probably in Spain. So when I was having that experience.
Hmm.
Maybe before 1980, but around there. Anyway, so, all right. So, I think we've covered the list.
All right, let's get right to the numbers.
Oh, okay, let's do that. Thank you so much for being on board and
Yeah,
say hello to your
absolutely.
rebellionaires.
All right. Bye
Okay.
for now.
All right. So we know you already know. I don't have to tell you that Tesla was down $12 today. $12 even. How about that? And in the after hours, another 420. So continuing to go towards the expected level of it's now at 286, 285. So the 275 is 10 away. I think we have to test. I'm not a technical analyst, but I think we're probably going to be testing 275. Some people say the number is 270. We're going to be testing at least one of those, if not both of those. I think that's my theory. And then once we've tested it, and we may have to test it twice, and it may take a couple of weeks. It may have to fiddle futz around in that area for a while, but we're going back to 480 on April 30th. April 30th, 480 on April 30th. Now, you just heard Bradford talking about the fact that he thinks it could take a while that we might hit our lows again right after the earnings call. I'm thinking that the earnings call will be, in addition to everything else that we know by then. That's the thing. We're going to know how the cars are selling. We're going to know how Model Y is selling. We're going to know if it's having any impact, if the European thing is a big deal or just a small deal. We're going to know how production is going. We're going to probably know what the Model Q is. I mean, there's so much that's going to happen by April 30th. So my theory is we're back to all-time high on April 30th, and then we'll see what happens in June when the robotaxis start rolling out, and whether there's a bunch of FOMO before that, or whether the market kind of waits to see what happens in Austin in June. All right, so the Dow Jones ended up down 188, falling dramatically. Everybody said that the final fall for the day might have been because President Trump was talking about tariffs again. And so there was this dramatic fall off about that time. And then at the end of the day, things kind of picked back up again to where but the Dow did end up down at 188. The NASDAQ managed to get back into green at 48.88, and the S&P got barely back into green, up 81 cents. The rest of the Magnificent Seven, you've got Apple solidly down, Google down, and the rest of them were up, with NVIDIA up 465 in anticipation of their earnings call, but down $2, down $1.96 in the after hours. Go figure. Yeah, that just makes no sense. Sometimes you just have to say it. That makes no sense. All right, let's go ahead and look. Bonds right now, after being down so nicely today, the bonds have started marching back up again. So the good news on NVIDIA might have actually been bad news for the bond market. Good news for NVIDIA, meaning the economy might be better than people thought. And so maybe that is why bonds bounce back up a little bit. So we're sitting at 4.271 now. I was all excited because I actually saw it at 4.9 something earlier today, but 4.273 as of this moment. 2-year up 1.6 basis points in the after hours at 4.088 and the 1 month at 4.319. There was also some talk that the 3-month inverted with the 10-year again. So while the other ones are not really even close to inverting again, the 3-month, which I guess is the one the Fed pays attention to, the 3-month versus the 10-year inverted again, which some people thought that was some bad news because again, it could be talking about recession. Again, I think there's a reasonably good chance. I guess right now I'd probably call it 50-50 that we're going to see a recession. It'll be short and it won't be deep. But we will. I think we will just not be able to generate enough jobs and income and cash flow to overcome what Doge is doing with DC, which needs to be done and which is going to be positive long term. But I think short term it is going to create a problem. Okay, then we have got oil up 10 cents, but still sitting nicely under 69 at 68.72. Brent unchanged. Natural gas unchanged, but at $3.90. So during the regular hours, it got under $4 at $3.90. That's the lowest in some time. We've got gold sitting at 29.32, up barely in the pre-market. Silver up, I'm sorry, down a little bit in the pre-market, down 0.11% at 32.23. Copper down 0.22% at $4.58 almost. You've got the dollar rising as treasury yields stabilize. Okay, that's the headline. And then you've got Bitcoin. Wow, Bitcoin continues down. 4,000 today, 84,223. Something that I forgot to bring up with Bradford is people are talking about that Bitcoin and Tesla are kind of moving together right now. And so you've got Bitcoin down 4.54% today, and again at 84,000. So that's pretty significant. You've got Ether down. I don't normally talk about Ether, but I just noticing here it's down even more. It's down almost 7%. Solana down 6.6%. So it's across the board right now with regard to the cryptos. And then we've got, whoops, I just hit the wrong button here. So sorry. What we got left is the equities for tomorrow morning. You've got the Dow down 77 or 0.17%. You've got the S&P down 4 or 0.07%. And you've got the NASDAQ down 38 or 0.18%. So the markets are down, NVIDIA's down. The only real news that I know about is the NVIDIA good news, where they beat on the top, the bottom, and their expectations for the rest of the year were strong. So I guess I'll do some more research. I'll let you know in the morning why in the world did NVIDIA go down and why was the market lower after the news that was supposed, are they selling on the news? I don't know. We'll see. I'll look into it much deeper and we can talk about it in the morning. That's all I got for you right now. Be sure to see Brian Wang in just a little while. There was another Brian Wang video last night, so I'll put the card for that one up for you to go check that out. Outstanding content. And again, tonight, we've already shot that. I already know what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about the Model Q a lot. He's got some stats, some suggestions, some ideas, some expectations in terms of the pricing, et cetera, that I think you'll find very valuable. That'll be at 7:45 later today. So that's it for now. It's been great talking to you.